are going to bake up a sourdough loaf since we are all out of sourdough bread here. And then we are going to whip up some mini bowls and and then a big bowl on there, as well as some peanut butter bars for a little treat. I haven't made them in a while. I think last time I made them when Teddy was recovering from surgery, and they're one of his favorites. So I was like, I'll whip these up. He'll be happy. So I've got my loaf here. This is just our traditional loaf that we're gonna score up and bake. So I'm gonna do a nice big expansion score. There we go. And you know what? I think I might do slightly different. Little feathered one again. It turned out so pretty the other day. Okay, we're gonna pop this in our Dutch oven that I have nice and hot. I preheated it up at 500 degrees. Slide this guy in here. We're gonna put the lid on and we're gonna bake it for 20 minutes at 500. Then we'll take the lid off and bake it for 20 minutes at 450. And while this is baking, we got a couple mini bowls to shape up and then a big bowl, as well as make our peanut butter bars. So let's get these guys in there. I'm gonna set my timer for 20 minutes. And let's get going on our peanut butter bars. So for our peanut butter bars, and these are like the lunch lady style peanut butter bars. They're just delicious. They're a Buckeye bar. If you've ever had like a Buckeye, the peanut butter dipped in chocolate. These are it, and they're one of my favorite little treats. But I love anything with chocolate and peanut butter in this. So we're gonna start off with essentially 2.5 packs of graham crackers, and we're gonna smash them up and kind of break them into a coarse crumb. I don't like mine too too thick, or kind of like too fine, I mean. So a coarse crunch. So you can put them through a food processor if you want, but I find just putting them in a bag, doing a little pre-crushing in here works just fine. I want some bigger chunks because I think it gives it better texture than leaving it too super fine. But you can always use pre-crushed graham crackers. You need about 3 cups of graham cracker crumbs. So we're gonna put them in the Ziploc baggie, and then I'm just gonna, pound it down a little bit to make the crumbs a little bit, wide, but I do want some good chunks in it. And then we're gonna mix together peanut butter, butter, and powdered sugar. And then we'll add in our graham cracker crumbs, and that will be the base of our peanut butter bars. Again, super simple to make, but so delicious. Get a little bit crushed up a little bit first. There we go. So I find that 2.5 packs of graham crackers gets me pretty close to 3 cups of kind of crushed up nice graham cracker crumbs on it. Set the air out and just push it down. You can use a rolling pin if you want to break up all those things. It doesn't take too long. And there we go. Again, I want a little bit of coarser, thicker crumbs to it because I think that gives it better texture to it. So let's get for our next part here. We've got our peanut butter. We're gonna use 1.5 cups of peanut butter for this. We will be using 1/4 cup more to make the chocolate peanut butter top to it. But we're starting off with 1.5 cups. So I'm gonna go in here with a spatula. And I'm just going to eyeball my 1.5 cups. It's a guesstimation. You don't have to measure completely.
What's a good substitute for the graham crackers?
So graham crackers are really the best thing to use, but you could also use Belvita little biscuits. Sometimes I will do them for a little less sweet. I've done half graham crackers, half Ritz crackers to make them a little bit more kind of salty in it. But graham crackers are really the best. Now you can do gluten-free graham crackers and those work as well for it. Okay, so we want 1.5 cups of peanut butter here, which I think I'm getting pretty close to. I want to make sure. I knew I had just like the perfect amount of peanut butter left for this dish. So that's perfect. And then we're going to put in 1/2 cup of room temperature butter. So you need it to be nice and soft so that it will whip together well with the peanut butter. And get that there. We're gonna whisk this together and then we'll add in 1.5 cups of powdered sugar. That's gonna give the sweetness to these bars. Now you need to use creamy peanut butter, not crunchy, because it just won't have the right texture and sweetness to it if you use kind of crunchy. And this is not one to use your healthy peanut butter on. This is, you've got to use, you know, your Jif or your Peter Pan or your Skippy. I don't know what other brands they make, but those are those big ones, you know, the ones you grew up with. We're going to whisk the 1.5 cups of peanut butter with 1/2 cup of butter. And just until we've got them kind of creamed together. Now these are a no-bake bar, so there's no part of this bar that you have to bake, which is nice, and they're actually ones that I keep in the refrigerator because it keeps them nice and firm and cold, and I think a cold peanut butter bar is just heaven. It's like so refreshing and delicious and such a great treat. So we're gonna add in 1.5 cups of powdered sugar. There we go, so that is 1 cup. I'm gonna have to, my husband's playing with my bear mitts. And 1/2 cup more. Now, if you're like me and like your peanut butter base, just to have a little bit of a pinch of salt, just a little bit salty so it's not super sweet, add in just a pinch of salt. You don't need much, but I find a pinch does it. Now, it's just a pinch. But it just cuts through some of the sweetness. Now we're gonna mix in our powdered sugar into our peanut butter and our butter mixture. There we go. Okay. And now we're gonna add into our crushed graham crackers. Again, coarsely crushed is better because it gives you that kind of that crunch in it, you know, and it just makes it nice. But if you don't want any texture, you can put them in a food processor or use the free one. But you need about 3 cups of graham cracker crumbs. We're gonna mix this together. Until all of it is incorporated into a nice kind of thick paste, almost like if you push it together it will hold, but it kind of crumbles apart. There we go. Beautiful. So we've got our base here. Kind of shake all of our peanut butter out. And this is the delicious peanut butter bar. Now, if you want to, you could roll these into balls and then dip them into chocolate to have your Buckeye. But making it in a bar gives you the same flavor, but saves you a lot of that step. What we're gonna do is, I don't need to grease this. For some reason, I was like, oh, I gotta grease my bar here. I'm like, not these ones you don't need to grease the pan for. Where's my spatula? I know. Oh, it's in there. We'll get a new one because that one's covered in peanut butter. Here we go. So we're going to take our base and we're going to put it in our pan here and then just press it down. And this is like, I'll show you, you can mold it together and it's going to hold together just fine. It has a little bit of stick to it, but it's not a dry base for it. But we're gonna press it down to make the base of our bar. Then we'll melt our chocolate and our peanut butter together to pour over the top. And then these are going to be done. They just need to chill for a little while to get the bar set. So I'm gonna spread it out, and then I'm gonna get some parchment paper here, and we'll press all of that down. You wanna make sure you don't leave any gaps in it. Now I am using a 9 by 13 inch pan. If you can make them thicker and use like an 8 by 8 or a 9 by 9 for an even thicker bar. You can also do them in like muffin tins where you have like almost like a little peanut butter disc on there. So we're gonna press this down and firmly together, just like you would with Rice Krispie Treats or Scotcheroos, and kind of bring out any of that kind of gaps in there. That way when you cut your bar, it won't fall apart. There we go. Okay, that's them all pushed down here. Voila. So now we have our base little surface to our bar. What I'm going to do is I'm gonna pop this in my freezer right here to let it chill while we melt the chocolate. And then while we're melting the chocolate, we'll start whipping up our mini bowls. But chilling the base here just is going to allow the bars to cool and set a little faster. Okay. We're gonna melt our chocolate. You don't wanna just melt chocolate over direct heat or you're gonna burn and scald it. But you also don't need a fancy double boiler. All you need is a pot, fill it up with about 1 inch of water, and then a heat-proof bowl. It can be glass or metal. Put it on, voila, you've got a double boiler. We're gonna turn our heat on. I'm just gonna do it over like a high. And then we're gonna put in, you need just 1 whole bag of chocolate chips. This is a big bag, so I'm not gonna use this whole bag. But the regular size, it's about 2 cups of chocolate chips. That's what you need. Get some scissors here. So we're gonna add in about 2 cups of chocolate chips. Good. And then our final 4th cup of peanut butter. And I'm just gonna scoop out this remaining bit. And that is close enough to 1/4 of a cup. So probably a little smidge more. And I'll use that spoon to mix in the peanut butter as it the chocolate and the peanut butter together as it melts. The peanut butter is going to make that chocolate a little bit more soft so that when you're eating the bar, because they are a refrigerator bar, you're not going to get like a rock hard chocolate on it. It will be a more soft one. Okay, let's get our sourdough bowls going up. So I have some sourdough proofing right here that I made up earlier. We are going to do a bunch of savory mini bowls, and then we have a big bowl that we're gonna do as well on there. When I'm shaping up, I'm gonna start with a good amount of flour. I just use regular, like, flour, all-purpose flour. I know some people love using like rice flour or whatnot. You know what? I keep it simple so I don't have 1,000,001 types of flour in my pantry. But we're gonna sprinkle a little bit in here so that when they're time to flip out, they're not going to stick. There we go. And then you want to make sure you have a generously floured surface as well. And I always say the cleanup is always thing, but use your dough scraper to clean up after this. We'll do our little drop here. There we go.
You have a question? Do you have your sourdough recipe posted?
I do have my sourdough recipe posted for everyone. It's my traditional loaf. I have the small one and the big loaf, as well as a recipe card on how you can make your own starter. And I do have videos and tutorials on how you can make your very own starter and your first loaf of bread, because it does take a little bit of, you know, if you don't know how to do it, it's not something that's easily done if you don't know the terminology. But once you understand that part, it's pretty simple. We're gonna go over again with flour. This is just gonna create it so it doesn't stick to everything. So just kind of coat it up. It just makes it easier to work with because sourdough is a higher hydration loaf. Let me grab my dough cutter here. This one. And so I'm gonna first cut this in, kind of divide it in half. So this is my double my big loaf recipe, which starts with 300 grams of an active sourdough starter, 1,160 grams of water, warm water, about 2 tablespoons of salt, and then 1,500 grams of flour. So that's all you need to make this recipe, this like loaf base for it. And this makes 2 of my really big loaves, or it's gonna make 6 mini bowls and 1 big one. Let's divide this guy up into 6. Let's do our big one first. That way we get kind of a zip. So the big one is going to be a dessert or a breakfast loaf. This is one of my family's favorite. And it's just using some strawberry jam. And you're gonna brush it on after you laminate it out, which is stretching out your dough here. And then we're gonna put our jam all in it, and it's gonna make this delicious jammy swirl throughout your sourdough, which is going to be fabulous. So we've got it all stretched out here. So this is called laminating, where you have it stretched out. Let me give my chocolate a little stir here, and then we're just gonna spread it out. Not ready yet. And then instead of using a knife to spread it out, use a spoon so you can scoop your jam out on here. Do it. I'm using strawberry, but I have done it with blackberry. I've done it with lots of different jam flavors on it. So you're gonna spread it out, and it is just so good. And I will say, you want to use a jam over a jelly because you do want to have some of those little fruit chunks in it. So fruit preserves work really well. I find jellies get too runny, so you don't want it to be just a juice based. There we go. Spread this guy. And again, you want to spread it all out to every kind of corner. We're also going to spread it in one more layer after we kind of do our little fold. And this is going to give that swirl effect inside our like our sourdough when you cut it open after you bake it. There we go. So now we're going to do our folds in. And then a little bit more jammy. I don't go quite as thick as this part because this can kind of leak out if you put too much on this middle fold. And then we're gonna roll this up, kind of like a little burrito here. And then I'm just gonna tuck these sides in. And we're gonna just shape it. There we go. And we're gonna grab it and then we'll transfer it in, and then I do what I call my little stitches. So you're gonna have a nice bottom, go into your flour thing, and then this is where I call it like you stitch it together. You just gently kind of pull these edges in to kind of seal it up. Now everything kind of melds together into one nice great loaf on here, but you gotta have your little stitches. Beautiful. And then I just sprinkle a little bit of flour over the top so that when I put my little dough cover on it, it doesn't stick to it. But here, we've got our big sourdough bowl done up. Spread this out. And then I'm gonna wash my hands real quick so we can prep up some of the other stuff and I can get this chocolate going for our peanut butter bars. Now, our other mini bowls that we're gonna do, we're gonna do some savory ones on there because I find the mini bowls, they're just really great. They almost are like a perfect sourdough bread for 2 people. I bake them up in my mini Dutch ovens that I have, and they're absolutely delicious. But these you can really do a whole bunch of different flavors with, which make them really fun. So we're gonna do a cheddar, cheese and green onion, and Italian herbs with parmesan, a mozzarella and pepperoni, and then some everything bagel, which is my oldest daughter's favorite. But I want to get a good mix in of this as we're going, as our chocolate is melting here. Okay, so let's start by dividing this dough right here up into 6 as equal as you can possibly be. I will say I often make mine where I have a tiny one and a really big one because it never is as even as I think I'm gonna make it. Add a little bit more to that one. Now you could get out a scale and work them if you wanted to, but I find that's an extra step. Let's go take the lid off of our sourdough right now, and we are going to turn the temperature down to 450, and we will bake for the final part of this. That way we can have some sourdough bread for breakfast in the morning. Okay. So this is always the moment of truth if it has the nice, beautiful pop, which it does. I'm always happy. And my scoring turned out beautiful. Okay, we're gonna pop this back in here. I'm gonna turn my temperature down from 500 to 450 because you don't wanna leave it at 500 because it will burn your top of your bread, make it too dark. And then I find the perfect amount of time is 20 minutes after this. I know that there are so many variations. Cook without the lid on, cook, for 30 minutes after. I find 20 minutes at 450 gives me the perfect kind of chewy with just a little bit of a crunch on it, but not super crunchy. I find if you bake it too long to where it's too dark, that crust gets really hard, especially the next day, and it's too crunchy to eat. This gives you that perfect chewy sourdough crust. So it's kind of like a blonde bake. We're gonna mix up our chocolate and our peanut butter here. We're getting there. Once you kind of see all of the lumps out of it gone, then you know that you're gonna be ready to put it on. And this is for our peanut butter bars that we have. We made our base using graham crackers, peanut butter, butter, and powdered sugar, and a pinch of salt. I'm gonna turn off, and so just use a little bit of that residual steam heat on here, because again, I don't wanna scald my chocolate. And this is pretty much done here. So, let me grab our bars out so we can actually pour it over. Again, I have them just chilling in the freezer just to kind of firm them up nicely. Nice little steam facial here. Turn that off. We're good with this. And you're just gonna take your melted chocolate, and this again is peanut butter and chocolate, about 1/4 cup of peanut butter with 2 cups of chocolate, and we're going to pour this over our peanut butter bars, and then we'll spread it out. So I kind of just scrape it over, and then I'll spread it nicely with a spatula. Now, adding that 1/4 cup of peanut butter in here is going to allow this chocolate to have a it won't be a completely firm set, but makes it so it's not rock hard when you keep these in the fridge, because they are a refrigerated bar. You want to eat them cold, and therefore you need to mix something into that chocolate, otherwise it turns really firm. And of course, it gives you even more peanut butter deliciousness. Okay. Now let's spread this out. Now I'm doing this in a 9 by 13 inch pan. You could also do it in an 8 by 12, or if you want really thick bars with a thick top, you can do it in an 8 by 8 or a 9 by 9 for this. I find this is kind of like the perfect size, because it gives you just the right amount of chocolate to peanut butter ratio. And we're just gonna move it all the way down to the edges. Now, if you have Teddy Grahams, what I like to do sometimes if I have Teddy Grahams left over is I'll put like a bunch of little bears across here so you can kind of cut each bar with it, but I didn't have any Teddy Grahams today. There we go. Just get them into all the little edges. And then you just need to pop these in the fridge, and that chocolate sets typically within an hour in the fridge. There we go. And we'll just give it a quick little shake. That shaking just smooths out your chocolate, gives you a more pretty finished look so you don't have any little swirl lines. Okay, that will pop back in the fridge later, but I'll just keep it out for now while we prep up our little mini loaves here. So, these guys have already joined back together. Let's see, this one needs a little bit more. Again, I'm trying to make sure I've divided this as evenly as possible between 6, but I tell you, I never make it even. That one's good. I think this needs a little bit more. Okay, so, stop sticking to me. Let's get this guy in here. We'll let that set for a second. Let's do this one. So we're gonna laminate our dough out just like we did with the big bowl. So just kind of stretch it out. And then this is where we're gonna put all this delicious goodness inside it. This is kind of like an inclusion that we're folding in. You can also do inclusions earlier if you're making like one loaf. One big loaf you can mix in during your final stretch and fold phase. But I like to add it also during this one where it kind of goes into a swirl, and this is good for ones that you don't want to hydrate too much. Let's start with a little tickle. Let's start with our green onions. So this one's going to be a green onion and cheddar cheese. So I'm using some really fine green onions. You can also use chives or scallions as well for it. And we're just going to snip some up in here. There we go. And it's good for the first round. And then we're going to use cheddar cheese. You want to use a good cheddar cheese, good quality one, works well. You can cube it up if you want. I find shredded ones work a little bit nicer. But you can also shred it yourself so you don't have any of the anti-caking agent on it if you want to. And then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to kind of just fold this over. And then we're going to add just a little bit in here, but you got to be careful that you don't overfill this part so that it doesn't get too spread out when you're doing it. So we've got a little on top, and then just feel like I'm making a little burrito here. And then we're going to stick those guys in, roll it up gently. Now, the trick with the inclusions are you've got to be careful in your shaping because you don't want any of it to burst through. So be gentle with it. Don't pull it too firmly because then it will pop through, which means it will be on the outside of your bread when you bake it, which you don't want. But here we'll have, again, a nice bottom to it. We're going to put it in our floured banneton. And these are the cute little mini ones that I love. And they're perfect for my Dutch ovens that I have. I have these little mini individual Dutch ovens. And then we kind of do our little stitches to hold it together. And then I just sprinkle a little bit of flour over the top for it. And that is our first kind of inclusion loaf on there. That's gonna be our green onions and cheddar cheese. Now let's grab a next one. And again, a well-floured surface, because sourdough is a high hydration dough, which means that it is sticky. It's not like a yeast dough where you can touch it and knead it and work with it. You use a slightly different process with sourdough, which is more of stretching and folding. So we're gonna get this guy out. Now I don't like to stretch it too thin, because then it's not going to give you enough of a substance when you're putting your like deliciousness in it, you know, your inclusions. There you go, I couldn't think of the word. For this one, we are going to do, let's do our Parmesan cheese with our Italian herbs, Italian spices. So let me go wash my hands because I've got a little bit of flour on them.
You have a question? When you bake them up, how do you know which one is which?
So a lot of times I will try to guess, but when they bake up and you score them, you can typically see what your inclusions are and popping out. But there has been times where I've made ones and then I tried it and I'm like, oh, this is not what I thought it was. I like to try to make, I've now moved to make all savory ones so that no matter what you grab it with, you're not gonna make a mistake. Okay, we've got our Parmesan cheese. I'm gonna kind of crinkle this throughout. You could use freshly grated as well. I'm using shaved because I feel like it packs a little bit more of a, like you get a bit more in every bite. So we're gonna sprinkle that out. And then you're just gonna use some Italian spices here. I'm gonna sprinkle it on. Kind of like what I use when I make my Italian herbs and cheese bagels, which are so good. I need to make bagels again. And then again, a little bit of a sprinkle. We're gonna roll this guy up. Again, try to be careful so that you don't pop any of it, like your outer crust of your loaf. If you find that it's sticking to your hands too much, just kind of coat them with a little bit of flour. And then with this one, we're gonna also do a little bit of a shell on it with some spices. Let's do it, I'm gonna do it over the bowl. That way our crust will have this nice kind of Italian herb flavor to it. And a little bit more on here. So again, we're just gonna get a lot of great flavor with this. There we go. So now I've got our Parmesan and Italian herbs one. And clear out some of these spices so that it doesn't go into the next one. Okay, just a few more to go. Let's get our next one going. Grab some flour down here because again, it wants to be sticky. There we go. And I find, you know, you don't want it to be too, I like it to be a little bit sticky. I find it always bakes up well, gets a nice poof when it has the little things. If it like works just like a regular yeast bread, then it just never bakes up well for me. And I feel like with sourdough, I feel like you have to find the perfect one that works well with your starter, your combination on there. This has kind of been my one that just works really well, my like base for this traditional loaf. Okay, now we're gonna do our mozzarella cheese and some pepperonis. This is one of my husband's favorites. So we'll just sprinkle a little bit of our mozzarella. And then I've got pepperonis. You can use the mini pepperonis if you want. You're gonna wanna cut up your pepperonis unless you have the mini ones, because you want to have almost like cubed pepperonis. You don't want to leave them whole. So I've got some deli pepperonis here. That way you're getting like little bits in every bite, but you're not biting in and taking out a whole pepperoni. So we'll cut these up, add them in. There we go. And then I'm going to add a little bit of oregano. You could do Italian seasoning as well, but I find oregano works well. It pairs well with the pepperoni. Get that. There it is.
You have a question? Do you have a video of how to make the actual dough?
Yes, I do have a video on, as well as a recipe card on how you can make your very first starter or sourdough loaf, your traditional loaf, using like a recipe and all the steps to it. So it is definitely, if you've never made sourdough before and you don't have a starter, it will take you about a week to get your starter to bread ready. But once you have it, you're going to have the most delicious bread, and it's really easy once you figure out what every word means. And I do have videos, like a tutorial on how to do it. You just have to kind of dig through on our link to find it. But yes, and I will say, if you're wondering just start it. It is such a fun journey. There's so many things so many delicious types of sourdough breads you can make, as well as things with the discard, which is what you kind of throw away from your starter when you feed it up. So there's just lots of amazing things you can do with it. Like today we made some discard naan using our sourdough discard, and it was delicious. So we've got it shaped up here. Let's put it in our floured bowl. And then I'm going to just add a little bit of flour on the top, and that again is just going to keep it from sticking to things when I'm put my little bread covers on it. Okay, well, let's get our next one. This one is going to be an everything bagel one, where we're going to do an everything bagel crust on the outside as well as inside it. Again, this is my daughter's favorite one. She always wants me to make her grilled cheese sandwiches with the everything bagel sourdough. It's just delicious.
You have a question. Why do you have to do discard if you're making bread?
So discard, if you're making bread, you have your starter, which is in your jar. Your starter has to be active and bubbly, which means you have to feed it, giving it flour and water. And so the reason why you discard is if you keep giving it flour and water, your starter is going to grow and grow and grow, and it'll be huge. And you'll have to use a lot of flour and water to feed it. If you discard it, then you don't have to use quite as much flour and water when feeding it for it.
Feeding him, Gus Gus.
Feeding Gus Gus is the name of ours. So this is our everything bagel seasoning in here. So we're going to sprinkle lightly, because I don't do too heavy in the middle, because we do a pretty good outside coat of it. But I do like this little swirl in there. But yes, and so you want to discard because otherwise you're just going to have mountains of starter on there, especially how often you feed it. But you have to, in order to make sourdough bread, your starter has to be active. So, and that means you fed it within, 4 to 8 hours of, your starter. So you gave it flour. Okay. And now you want it to be a little bit sticky here so that we can kind of coat it with our everything bagel seeds. Sometimes it's easier just to stick it on. There we go. This is going to give you this kind of crust on the outside. And slide it off. There we go. I didn't use as much flour because I want these seeds to all stick to it. And this is, I will say, the everything bagel seasoning has a lot of flavor, because you've got onions in it and garlic. Now, if you do everything bagel ones, you are going to have to really wash your little covers, because they always make them very dirty afterwards. Okay. Now, let me clean up this little mess. We've got 2 more that we need to shape up and mix. Get my hands washed a little bit for this. And this next one is also one of our favorite kind of loaves to make, and it's really simple. It's a black pepper loaf with Parmesan. You can also use Gouda. I'm out of Gouda cheese, but we're gonna do Parmesan. But you wanna use just like a simple white cheese, not a cheddar, but like Parmesan, Gouda, Havarti, mozzarella. One of those will work really well with this. And then we're gonna use oregano and black pepper, and a good amount of black pepper. And this is such a delicious loaf.
You have a question? Is there a specific flour you like to use?
So I really just use an unbleached bread flour when I'm making the dough. And there's really not, I just kind of go and see what's on sale every week for it. I find that they all turn out well. It even turns out using just unbleached all-purpose flour. You get slightly, I feel like all-purpose gives you a puffier bread, while bread flour gives you a nice chewier texture to it. But I don't really have, I buy the Costco flour, and you know, I've also get the King Arthur's. I use really whatever I can find on there. The only time I'm really specific which flour I use is when I'm making my pizza dough. I do use like a 00 or 00 flour for that, because it does make a difference. Bread, I feel like it all kind of works well. So when I say we're gonna use a good amount of black pepper, you're gonna make a nice kind of dark coating of it for this. And then we're gonna do oregano.
You have a question? Do you ever make bread bowls for soup?
Yes, I do. It's one of my favorite things to do. So these, and when I make bread bowls, these are really similar. Now these will make, they're a little bit too small for doing it. So when I make my bread loaves for using my big loaf, I divide it into 4. So 6, you can make them, but they'd be a really small one. But instead of dividing it into 6, if you divide it into 4, and then you can use these little mini Banneton baskets for it. And then I just bake it up in a slightly bigger Dutch oven for it. But yes, it is so good. I do love it. Especially, I was going to say, I'm like, oh, I need to make some creamy tomato basil soup, because I feel like that was in the early 2000s. That was the soup that you got with your bread bowl at Bread and Company when I was first kind of introduced to that. And when I went to San Francisco, I did have our the bread bowl with their famous like clam chowder there. We're gonna go grab our loaf out of the things, but let me shape this guy up real quick. That way we can pop it in our basket. And then our sourdough loaf is nice and ready. Let's get this one, and then we'll just have one more after this. Okay, let me put this to the side. So we'll come back here with this. Now we're gonna grab our sourdough loaf out of here. So I, again, like to do just 20 minutes at 450, because I find that it gives it the perfect kind of blondish golden brown color to it without overcooking it. Look at this gorgeous sourdough loaf here. Turns out beautiful. I always love it when my scoring, which I never put that much thought into it, but when it comes out like beautiful. I'm an artiste. So when you get it out of the oven, you want to take it out of your Dutch oven, because this Dutch oven stays hot for a good amount of time, and it will continue to cook the bottom of it. And you want it to be this nice kind of golden brown, so it doesn't get too dark and too crunchy. But again, we have our nice little peak. Here is our little feather design that we did today. And this is gonna be, I can just tell it's gonna be a delicious loaf. And it's my traditional loaf. So the dough that we are working with right now is the same base recipe on there. And I will say, it is like the perfect ratio. It is a very fabulous ratio. And it always seems to give me a really good loaf of sourdough. And I've worked with a couple other ones before. Now this one is one that uses a bit more starter than several loaves, but it works.
You have a question about the black soup cauldrons? Where'd you get those?
Those are from Target, and they were part of the Joanna Gaines collection like 4 years ago. Oh, how time flies! I absolutely love them. They're my little favorite things, but I don't think she makes them anymore on there. But I'll go grab one since these are. I feel like when it's soup weather, I have to get my little cauldron out because and I have like 8 of them. So if my kids ever break them, they're gonna be very sad. I'll be very sad. But they're stoneware, but that's the Hearth and Hand. Really, really love them. They're super cute. Now that I made it nice and dirty. But I always love my little cauldron. They're the perfect size for soups. Okay, let's stretch this last one out. And this one, I think we're gonna do a 3 cheese because I didn't really have a direction with this one, but I think a 3 cheese, just a cheese loaf, I think will be delicious. So we'll do a little bit of cheddar to make it better. And then parmesan. And then I'm gonna do a little bit of mozzarella. And then I'm going to add in some garlic salt because then it can be like a garlic cheesy bread loaf. So look, just making it up as I go. So we're gonna sprinkle a little bit of garlic in here. And we're gonna fold this guy up. And then we'll just put a little teeny bit of cheese on this outer bank here. And then last but definitely not least, we've got our cheddar. And then we'll add a little bit of garlic salt because you can't go wrong with garlic salt.
The chat was waiting for you to bust out the garlic salt.
Yes, I love some garlic salt. It is just, if you haven't made the switch to it in cooking, it is going to make your food so much more tasty. Okay, we got our nice little shaped up. That's going to be the outer crust of it. Let me make sure my flour is coated around. And then we'll do a little stitches again. Be careful because that cheese can poke through, so you don't want to pull too hard when you're shaping. I know some people, they'll do lots of little playing with it, but you know what? Simplicity sometimes works the best. And I find they all turn out well. And like I said, I told you I was going to have one that was not going to be the same size as any of the other ones. This is going to be the tiny one. But we've got our 6 mini bowls that we did everything. This one's Italian herbs and cheese. This is our triple cheesy bread. This one's our Italian and herbs and cheese. This is our black pepper, and I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore. But these are all of our delicious bowls. And then of course we'll have our breakfast one, which is strawberry jam swirled out. And it kind of makes the nice little candy over there. We've got our peanut butter bars that we're gonna pop in the fridge and chill up so the kids will have a nice treat tomorrow when they not when they wake up, but at lunch tomorrow. And then of course for breakfast, we will all be able to enjoy our nice new loaf of sourdough bread, which with avocado and egg, a fried egg in the morning, it's the best breakfast. Well guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're doing and making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page, so if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to our link and search for what we make. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different baking goods, sourdough goods, all the different things we use in our kitchen. I've got my mini banneton bowls there, as well as all my little different sourdough equipment that I use for baking in there, as well as everything else, if you guys want to check that out. But again, thank you so much for joining.